This is eCoffee with Experts, where marketers and founders share what's actually working in SEO, AI, and digital growth. Grab your coffee and fuel your mind as we chat with top minds about their wins, struggles, and lessons you won't find in a blog post. Brought to you by Digital Web Solutions, we bring real talk to help you grow your business, one episode at a time. Let's get started.
Emily, welcome to eCoffee with Experts. It's good to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Tell me about your position with Neon Canvas. What do you do now? And what's your day look like?
Yeah, so I am the director of SEO and communications. So two kind of different hats, but they funnel together really well, especially in the world of AI, as I know we're going to kind of get into. But my day-to-day, so I oversee a team of 5 individuals and a few freelancers. We've got a couple interns right now too, so it's always fun to throw them in the ring. And half of the time I'm working on the SEO strategy for our overarching, we've got 300 client sites that we manage, and just kind of like working through helping. Maybe I did mess up.
No, not at all.
It's like for some reason, like the camera hits and you're like stumbling. I know that's like strike this out.
Hilarious. Oh my gosh. That's funny.
Yeah, so I oversee 300 client sites for orthodontists and dentists across the country, and so we are working day to day. Yeah, it's a good amount, but they're so similar; they're not competing with each other. So the SEO rollout is, something that we can kind of replicate and tweak slightly for each individual market and each individual client. So my day to day is just assessing each different client sites that come up and making sure our team stays on their optimization schedule and that we can kind of tackle anything and everything that comes our way.
You have with 300 clients. I'm always curious about this, and they're all relatively in the same niche, right? Elective healthcare, like you said, orthodontics and dentistry, and some other, even some aesthetic. Some aesthetic clinics. How do you keep content fresh, or how do you keep link building fresh? How do you separate the strategy when everybody is in the same niche, and probably some even in the same market?
Yeah, so we start with a kind of like a core best practices suite that we apply to most of our sites, but it's a small core. It's a strong core, but it's small. And then our SEO strategists come in and they will kind of build onto that. So they're going to look up what are people searching in these local markets specifically, how much search volume there is for specific queries. And then we funnel those terms and content briefs to a team of writers that we have. And so, I think it's funny because like in the AI world, I originally thought that maybe writers, you wouldn't need them as much, or you would need far fewer, or it would all kind of be automated. Churning out AI content just to churn it out is not necessarily going to help anyone. So having that team of writers who's able to use AI tools, but also use their own creativity and their own experiences as copywriting, and marketers in general, really helps us keep content fresh and to build out context for each of our individual practices to show, Google, but also AI search tools that each practice is different and reflect that to prospective patients.
And you have a background in copywriting and have been in creative positions throughout your career. How do you bring that into your team as a process? I'm looking to understand how you pull out the creativity of your team. Are there guidelines that you have or principles that you have on your team? Yeah. How do you bring out the creativity on your team?
Yeah. So I love this question. I'm like, we were talking about this, but I've been a writer my whole life. And so writing is kind of like where I feel like my whole career is like, cushioned in. And I'm really protective of writers. So we all work together. There's several different ways that we can kind of keep that fresh. One is I like to have about like quarterly trainings. So where we all kind of come in, we all sit together and we talk about like what's new and what's fresh, how to exposing them to like different styles of writing or different things that are coming out. Whether it's a billboard I saw driving down, I live in Memphis, driving down the street. Or it's a marketing campaign that I really liked that I thought had really good copy, sharing that with them. So always kind of like keeping that fresh and like that tilled ground. But also I encourage all of my writers to have what I call a creative outlet client. It's like find who is your favorite, who's a brand that you really connect with deeply, that maybe they have more of a fun voice or they connect more naturally with your own style, and spend more time on them. Lean into that connection and like use that as like your playground, not only to do great work for the client, like above and beyond, but also to feel fulfilled in your own role.
Mm.
Orthodontic writing can be repetitive. You learn a lot. I always say it's like the second best thing to like going to dental school for real, which is not the
Yeah.
truth. But it's close.
It's just a quip that we like to say on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. It's a soundbite. But anyway, but if you have that creative outlet client, and if you're also keeping your mind fresh with new content that you see from around the world around you, it's a wonder how the creativity can continue to flow.
Yeah. And speaking of podcasts and creativity, you're the host of Neon Buzz podcast, which is Neon Canvas's, sponsored podcast. How does that tie into the overall strategy? Like, what is the podcast for? Is it a creative outlet for you, your brainchild, or is it for part of your EEAT? Or, what's the strategy behind starting that podcast?
Yeah, so we have a team of about six. We call it the vision team. So we six individuals as like a panel, and so we started this
Uh-huh.
podcast. It launched a year ago, so we started it like a year and a half ago, and we all kind
Cool.
of got together and worked through what do orthodontists and dentists need to know about marketing, kind of like on a grassroots level. And so we found this as the best way to kind of like give our internal team a connection to their internal teams and to
Mm.
present these trends and things on a layperson's perspective, and that's kind of hard. They go to school for so long to become dental professionals. And while you can pick up so much from, just kind of like osmosis around you for marketing, there's a lot of really detailed concepts that I'm sure all of the audience can connect with that are in many ways almost as like specific as some of the worlds that our clients serve.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason, just to provide a helpful resource because we know how much they need this information.
Yeah. I mean, if you go to school to be an orthodontist, you bypass the opportunity to go to school for business. And that's a completely different skill set. So it seems like marketing essentially is business, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the lifeblood of all these practices, they're only successful not because they do high quality work, but because they have the ability to bring in clients.
Mhm.
And, if they've not gone through business school, it's awesome that there's now a resource that they can listen to. So the audience is for the business owner, essentially, the orthodontist or the
Yeah,
dentist or
for sure. Yeah, it usually is, but it also has been a resource for their teams. So maybe their treatment
Mm,
coordinators often run some of their marketing strategies in-house. Front desk coordinators, anybody who's in the office and who has some functionality in their in-house marketing, it's kind of becomes a liaison between us and them.
okay. So if someone's listening to the podcast and they hear about Neon Canvas through the podcast and they're working at an orthodontist office or they are the business owner themselves, at what point do you find that clients typically come to you and ask for help? Is there like a common tipping point where they're like, maybe I've tried a general SEO agency and now I want a specific one, or I've never done marketing before and like I just can't seem to crack this new, SEO code with AI overviews, or like at what point, what's the main challenge that your clients typically have when they come to you, if there is a trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's hard to pinpoint a specific trend. The
Hmm.
ortho world is very niche, so it is like its own little neighborhood of people, and they
Yeah.
all it's very interconnected. Many people know each other. A lot of it's
Mm.
influence based. So there's like
Hmm.
micro influencers in the industry. We were actually founded by Dr. Kyle Fagala, and he's a major contributor to the ortho thought leadership space. So
Hmm.
a lot of people find us through him, and just that trust that's built with him as an individual and how well he's honed his practice kind of translates to us as well. But I would also say that I think that there's a handful. I mean, some people have worked with an agency before that, maybe is not as niche down as us. And so there's just a level there because ortho respects ortho in a lot of ways. So having an
Hmm.
agency who understands like the lingo that has, actually, like I said, like they has learned some of the things that you might learn in dental school, has interviewed many orthodontists and dentists, so that content is so much more apparent and fresh.
Mm.
And we also finds that like orthodontists really care so much about their personal brand and their what their practice gives off. So as much as SEO and like rankings are important to them, also the ability to communicate through their content with their patients
Mhm,
is equally as important. And so I think that that's a huge reason that they come to us is that we can kind of hit both of those at the same time.
mhm. It's almost like you're a product manager, right? Where you're taking the insights from the consumer and you're translating it into technical language, right? That's kind of the role. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, very nice. So when you're talking with these practices, how do you communicate to them like how to think about their brand in an AI era? You know, how does their online presence need to change in order to continue showing up in AI overviews and in Chat GPT? Like what does an online brand need to look like?
Yeah, I love this question. And I honestly could go on and on and on. So I'll keep it to just kind of a handful of things. I think context is going to become so much more important. So in the past, what has worked is like, essentially getting a typical orthodontic site up. So talking about the doctor, talking about the treatments they offer, sharing insurance, having an insurance and financing page to talk about like what that looks like in general
Mhm.
because many of these principles, like we've talked about, apply over time. Most practices, for instance, don't want to share price transparency. So those are just little
Mm,
things that you bake in and you know because they want to get the patient in the door before they share this information.
sure.
Context, like I said, is becoming so important because if you're going to search in ChatGPT, who's the best orthodontist near me, it's not going to rank it in the traditional way that you would see it on Google. So it's this very similar query, very
Mhm.
different responses. And usually those responses are going to include differentiators. So it's a lot more
Mm,
qualitative and a lot less quantitative in that it might pull
mhm.
from views. It might tell them what people are saying about you. It may pull from your social media, which is a crazy thing that we've been seeing.
Mm,
It's going to give the reader a lot more it's going to attempt to give the reader the best overview of who you truly are. So when you are thinking about content going forward, like having things that set you apart written out, spelled out on your site, going to be that much more important so that those LLMs can scrape that information and share that with patients.
mm. I guess that goes back to my question on how do you bring out the creativity of your team because that's where it's gonna show up, right?
Yeah.
Do you have I mean, what's the process of talking with these businesses, talking with the clients and bringing out their unique differentiators? How do you get that uniqueness from each client in an industry that is, you know, like you said, is very niche? Yeah, how do you bring out the differentiators from each of your clients?
Well, I mean, I think when you work in a niche industry for years on end, you learn naturally how to find like the things that make things different. You know what I mean? Because you're seeing it all the time.
Mhm.
So you're seeing it on a more granular level than you would have a couple years ago. Um
Mhm.
so I think what we are able to do is like a lot of times, I mean, we're an agency that's known for its relationships primarily.
Mm.
And so we've got account managers who will spend time asking the clients questions.
Mhm.
Our copywriters often will interview orthodontists for specific blogs to get information from their level and like their specific treatment approach.
Mm.
Um, and we also have some pretty robust questionnaires. So depending on when in their journey they need some additional content, we'll send these out. We'll pull from them some information, and then what we're able to incorporate that on a strategic level for each case.
Mhm. And you were talking with me earlier about link building strategies and how local is really where the gold is, especially in a niche like this. Can you walk me through a little bit more about what you mean by like local link building strategies and how you guys are approaching that, how you're getting the juice?
Yeah, absolutely. So we and this is something that's kind of in the works, but we are brainstorming some different ways that we can help facilitate orthodontists, dentists relationships within their own local community so that we
Mm,
can take it to the digital world as well as the physical world. So what that might look like is working with an orthodontist and saying, here's a suite of content that you can send out. Here's an email like reach out to them and we will help them work with their referring dentists to create content. So through
mm.
that backlinks. And so what
Yeah.
that's going to do is it's going to signal to Google, on a much deeper level than if it was, even just like from Yext, for example, or local or, some listing services that this is a trusted practice, not only
Mhm.
because of its authority for Google, but because it's been trusted by somebody in on the ground in this city that like knows them and respects them.
Mm. Yeah, you're bringing those in-person relationships, like literally referring clients to each other, walking down the street, let's say, and then you're just displaying that back to Google through posting and yeah, through linking to each other. Yeah, super smart. I wonder, do you introduce your clients to each other in order to like kind of expedite that strategy? Or is it something that kind of happens naturally?
It's one of the things that we're working out. So, like I said, this
Okay,
has been a big push of a year for us. So
got
we're
it.
trying to, really bring this SEO team into this AI world, which really has only been
Hmm.
able to happen over the course of this year. And it depends. I think each case is honestly on its own level. And like we're
Hmm.
relationship focused, so we're really hammered in and like zooming in on each individual case so we can find what is the best for this use. Not the same strategy is not going to work in every single situation, and the same, different practices have different relationships with businesses in their communities. And so it kind of has to be that like cellular level of like differentiation so that it can be effective. And so it's kind of hard to say like exactly overall what that strategy would look like because it's never going to
Hmm.
look the exact same.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. Like SEO and creativity and copywriting content, especially in a niche industry, is evolving and changing so much. And you have a lot on your plate as the director of SEO and creative content. Like, I'm curious what the main challenge is in your specific role, not just in the industry as a whole, but like as Emily, who goes to the office or logs on every day, like what challenge is persisting right now that you're spending a lot of time thinking about and trying to solve?
That's a good question. I think a big challenge in my role is finding, clients are constantly asking us, how are we addressing the world of generative engine optimization, as it's being
Yeah.
termed? And so finding ways to let them know that like there's not really necessarily one perfectly effective tool out there. Like in the same way we have SEMrush to figure out keyword research,
Mhm.
totally different ball game because there's no LLM is just sharing what people are prompting, and in a lot of ways for privacy purposes we don't want them to. So
Mm.
we can't predict exactly what people are typing in. We don't know exactly how long their prompts are or how detailed they become or how many iterations it takes for them to reach an actual answer. And so there's just so many unknowns.
Mhm.
But trying to work with what we do know, which will be very broad information, and then applying that through their traditional SEO best practices. I mean, it's still the best GEO is still good SEO. And so we're fortunate in
Yeah.
that sense. But communicating that to them and reassuring them that as long as they're following these steps, knowing we're looking ahead to the future, and once we get an answer, we'll share that with them and keeping them reassured, I think.
Yeah. A lot of it is just managing expectations and having strong communication with the client. Like, hey man, we know we have a vast experience in marketing and tech, but to be honest, like we're not quite sure how this new technology works.
Well,
Yeah.
and I want to like emphasize that I think it's important to be honest about that. It
Yeah.
really bothered me earlier in the year when like different platforms, and I won't name anything, but would say, "Okay, we've got this tool. Here's your GEO tool." And I'm like, "Well,
Mhm.
when I dig into it, it's not really as robust as you're saying, and it's kind of like assuming tons and tons of information. So, like, how reliable is it?"
Mm.
And I would rather wait until we find something totally reliable that I can stand behind fully before I tell clients like, "Hey, here's what we're using." Because I think that that's long-term trust building, and that's when they're really going to know that
Mhm.
you're there for their best interest and not just to kind of like sell them a service that really doesn't exist yet and really kind of may work or may not work. And that's just kind of like my own personal take.
Yeah, it's important to not be seen as a cash grab
Yeah.
agency, right? I mean, at the same time, you understand how important it is to have budget to, do some of this research. I don't know how much, what percentage of the budget goes toward, things that aren't proven yet or things that we can't exactly put a finger on, but there's got to be some sort of like experimental budget. If you had more, let's call it experimental budget, what would you put that budget towards, which you're like curious, you think there's some traction there, it's still a black box. Like what are you leaning into that you have a feeling is going to be really important in the next, 12, 24 months, but we're not quite there yet. Like What are you feeling?
I mean, I have listened to a lot of people and over the past few months talk about different ways. I think a lot of people are leaning more into the technical applications of like what has worked maybe in the past for SEO that they believe now is working and pulling them into prompt responses. I think we need to take a step back entirely. And I think this would be kind of like maybe in my mind, maybe it seems a little radical, but thinking only about the human. I mean, I think that this is where it comes far more into play is really thinking like who is your audience, making sure that the content on your site is specific enough to their individual queries. And like I said, so
Mhm.
we for example, like prompts are probably a lot more contextual. So if whereas a mom 2 years ago would probably go on Google and say braces near me, her prompt
Mhm.
in ChatGPT is probably gonna be like, "Hey, my kid is 8 years old, like, he's having a harder time, like, breathing, like, what does he need?"
Mm.
Or she might say, like, "Hey, I had braces when I was 15, now my teeth are apart, where should I go? Who's the best person in my town to go to for this?" So it's so
Mm.
specific, and having those things answered on your site and bringing in that specificity, I have a feeling would take a very long time but would be so rewarding in the end because it actually reflects who you are in the most tangible way that we can get in the digital sphere.
Yeah, it's, top of funnel content is still important, but it almost seems like it's not as important as, let's say, middle of the funnel, which is less of like, what are braces? Like, why do people get them? What's the general pricing? What to watch out for? It's more about like this specific kind, like what the differences are in between, like if you're here or if you're here. That sort of content where you can get really specific is, from what we're seeing and the people that I'm talking to, is where a lot of time and focus is being spent, because that's typically what's showing up because of the longer queries, right? It's less about like, I need braces, like where do I get them? It's more
Mhm.
about, so I'm curious then, in your, let's say, long tail keyword research, like how are you approaching keyword research differently compared to LLMs?
Think right now, I mean, we are still approaching it in a very similar way. So
Okay.
thinking about doing keyword research and pulling insights from that to get those long tail keywords. But I think we also try to have a little bit of a more creative outlet in that thinking about it from our own perspectives, thinking about it from what we know of the orthodontic audience and the patient base. It's like what do they need in a more organic way than we have in the past because we don't have those numbers exactly. And so kind of pairing those two together, sitting with each other and brainstorming, working with practices and asking them what do people ask you? What do people want to know? And getting them to just share that information with us. I think that
Mm,
that's kind of the direction that we're headed. Like I said, I don't want to say that we have an answer when we don't have an answer yet. We don't.
sure.
We're working through it together constantly and
Yeah.
testing things on sites and seeing what comes up and kind of just refining that process as we go. It's gonna be a
And
minute.
you know what? Yeah, seriously. And I appreciate you saying that, because again, if somebody says they have the answer with how to beat AI or how to like absolutely do it, like you said, with the platform or the tech that you've experimented with, nobody has the answer. So I just appreciate you being forthcoming in saying that
Yeah,
and admitting that, because that's the sort of transparency I'd imagine that your clients appreciate. And that's maybe why they will stick with you even through the dips, because you're sharing with them that you're trying to figure it out as you go.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, you stay honest in the good times and the bad. People know that they can trust you, and I think that that
Yeah.
goes agency-wide, as well.
Yeah. So I'm curious, when it does come to this AI, right? The inputs we're still unsure of, but we can still track, visibility in certain ways. We can see attribution here and there,
Mhm.
depending. But like, what sort of success metrics are you looking at to communicate back to the client that says, "Hey, our efforts are actually helping us show up in AI overviews, LLMs"? Like, do you have those metrics set up, or how do you know you're gaining traction?
Yeah. I mean, visibility and sentiment, of course, are the main factors that we're looking for. It's harder to, like I said, it's harder to track on the local level than it is
Hmm.
on the traditional level. And I think that's always how SEO has gone is traditional and then local follows. So it's very qualitative right now. It's very qualitative.
Hmm.
It's very like individual based. So figuring out what are they showing up for? How are they showing up when they do show up? and then finding ways to address those things or to kind of shift the narrative for each individual practice. And that's kind of what we're looking at. And I am hopeful that we will continue to like build some additional like KPIs that we can track. And I know that we will as we go. Right now, it just feels like there's just really two: visibility and perception. And it's kind of funny
Yeah.
that like it's just weird to be in a world where it's like we have so much data for SEO, so many numbers to look at. And for this, we're kind of just like running blind. It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it is hard to track. It's not like traditional, like, all right, here's the impressions, click-through rates, like
Yeah.
transactions, right? It's a little bit more gray than than it has been in the past. So I guess as we look into the future, like coming back, if you were to take Emily right now and transport yourself 12 months in the future and you were able to talk to that person, what do you think Emily 12 months in the future would tell Emily now to focus on or to like lean into, or if she has any doubts, like to put those doubts to rest? Like, what
Yeah.
would you want to hear from your future self?
I mean, I think that what I would hear is that we're shifting into a world where social SEO is almost, it's a huge vein in and of itself that feeds
Mm,
into both traditional SEO and GEO. And we've already noticed that the short form videos tab on Google has appeared. And so, and we're
mm,
also noticing, like, I don't know if you've ever like asked ChatGPT like about yourself and see what comes up, but sometimes social will come through in a way that hasn't really been accessible in search before. And so we've
mhm,
kind of, I think what I'm going to hear from myself is that we're moving into like there's a trifecta of search now. Search in general, not search SEO.
mhm.
It's a very different world, but a lot more organic and a lot more kind of just like back to the basics, like if you have a good business, if it's reflected, if you have got good reviews, you're going to succeed more if you can connect with your audience. And I think that's where we will be.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was, I don't know if I read it from your LinkedIn or something, but someone said if it's good for the patient, it's good for the SERP. If it's good for the patient,
Yeah.
it's good for the search engines, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
just thinking about the human on the end, yeah, who's receiving that.
Yeah, and I think search, I mean, SEO has always sort of been that way, but I think we
Hmm.
have, have been so wrapped up in the technical aspects of it that I think, we may be forgetting or we may not realize what's coming, in that it is so much more important to have those contextual answers for people who have very specific questions that have just not been able to be asked before in the digital world. They would have to wait till they get to the practice to ask such deep questions, and they're not going to do that now. So if you're able to be a good representative online, you will be a good representative in person, and people will continue to trust you.
I love that. I love that. Emily, where can we find it more about you and about Neon Canvas?
Yeah, well, watch the Neon Buzz. We're producing podcasts once a month right now, but you can also follow us on social at Neon Canvas. And if you want to hear any more insights specifically from me, I'm a frequent LinkedIn poster. I'm kind of keeping everybody up to date as I learn new things, and I find it a really cool platform to just kind of like hash things out. So yeah, find me in any of those platforms, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. I love it. Well, from one podcast host to another, thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope you have a great day.
All right, I hope you have a great day too.
Thanks.